Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're back in session and things have continued to proceed on. I appreciate so much my colleagues calling the attention to this national disaster, really. Opioids are being used and seem to be unprecedented levels. And I know since I've been here, there was basically a war against the use of methamphetamines, and so we restricted law-abiding citizens' access to Sudafed, the one decongestant that works on me, has since it was discovered. But now we've had more drugs pouring across our southern border, according to what DEA agents and local law enforcement have been telling me in Texas, and Border Patrol down at our border, DPS at our border. Drugs pouring in, and seems to have more purity and be more devastating to people that get hooked on them. Obviously, we've had doctors and nurses. I've sentenced many professionals, a number of them at least, for the crimes committed, and they're getting access to opioids. But it's a problem. What concerns me also is that it appears this administration is saying, we'll help you clean up the criminal justice inadequacies as long as you'll pass bills. People, thousands and thousands of people released from prison early. We've seen from the figures that were provided to Senator Jeff Sessions that, pursuant to his request, that of all the people in federal prison for possession of illegal substances, 77% of them are not citizens of the United States. 77% of those in federal prison for possession are not U.S. citizens. So obviously, this president's been giving illegal, unconstitutional amnesties out like they were water at a marathon, and hopefully the Supreme Court is once and for all going to assure that that stops. But it makes sense when you look at this as being an election year, and the Democratic governor of Virginia makes thousands of felons eligible to vote. All they need is to get out of prison, and then this president wants thousands and thousands more released from prison. The old saying is true here in Washington: no matter how cynical you get, it's never enough to catch up. We should do criminal justice reform. I've been pushing for it for the years I've been here, I guess for the last 8 years. But if it is only going to get the law, if it's combined with scrapping the sentences that were arrived at by judges agonizing over an appropriate sentence, then I hope and pray it will not happen until January of next year, when a new president is in office, so that it does not get linked. I mean, the cynicism for an administration to say, yeah, we'll do the criminal justice reform that's necessary, but only if you'll allow us to release thousands and thousands from prison, which there is no question people will be murdered, people will be robbed, people will be assaulted, shot, burglarized, in crimes that never would have happened if the president hadn't pushed the early release of so many criminals. So I hope and pray that we will be the guardians here in the House of those American citizens that would be killed, robbed, burglarized, assaulted, if the president gets his way and releases people early. We can't allow that to happen if we're going to keep our oath to the American people. We've heard so often in this room, and goodness, we've heard right here across the street in front of the Supreme Court, people that claim to be illegally in this country. The only reason I'm saying claim to be in this country is we've heard that all the people in this country are in the shadows, and we need to bring them out of the shadows. And these people that were claiming to be illegally here, protesting in front of the Supreme Court recently, they were not in the shadows. They were in full sunlight out in front of the United States Supreme Court, and in fact blocking traffic there right in front of the Supreme Court building. Ultimately, the police just shut off the streets because so many people were in the streets. Well, this story from yesterday from the Washington Examiner entitled "Cashing In: Illegal Immigrants Get $1,261 More Welfare Than American Families." Story says illegal immigrant households receive an average of $5,692 in federal welfare benefits every year, far more than the average Native American household at $4,431, according to a new report on the cost of immigration released Monday. The Center for Immigration Studies, in an analysis of federal cost figures, found that all immigrant-headed households, legal and illegal, receive an average of $6,241 in welfare. And I'll point out parenthetically here, that is an average. Obviously, not everybody gets welfare that's here legally and illegally. Obviously, there are lots of household welfare, but this is an average, and the article says 41% more than in Native households. As with Americans receiving benefits such as food stamps and cash, much of the welfare to immigrants supplements their low-wage jobs. The total cost is over $103 billion in welfare benefits to households headed by immigrants. A majority, or 51%, of immigrant households receive some type of welfare, compared to 30% of Native households, said the analysis of census data. And I'd like to insert, Mr. Speaker, when Steve King and I visited in England, in London, with Social Security office equivalent there, they pointed out that in order to receive Social Security type benefits in England, the law requires proof that you've been in the country for 5 years before you're eligible. And we were told, I didn't see them, but we were told that in applying to come to the country or being in the country, you had to agree not to apply for benefits for 5 years. The idea being, if they're just an immigrant magnet for people who want to come get welfare, they would go broke. That was their reasoning. And actually, it's quite good reasoning. As one of the leaders there in the office said, she made clear, look, make sure that people coming into England are going to be contributors to our society and not just takers from our society. Well, I don't know if she's been successful. Apparently there are people that come in that are just takers there. But this idea is interesting. It puts to the test whether someone is just coming in to get welfare benefits they've never participated in, helped pay for, or are they coming in to help make America a better country? Of course, some think if I come into America and they're paying me benefits, obviously America's a better country because me getting welfare makes it a better country. But most of us would not necessarily agree with that. At least I hope most would not. But to see this figure that the total cost is over $103 billion for welfare benefits to households headed by immigrants, possibly as much as anything else ought to indicate our immigration policies, and certainly of this administration, need dramatic changes. Perhaps it would be good to put a pause on immigration until we get this worked out, because we're doing great damage to our country and we're doing great damage to other countries. Anyway, this goes on to say immigrants receiving the most in the study of 2012 figures come from Mexico and Central America. Their average annual taxpayer fund collection is $8,251. It's 86% higher than the benefits received by native households, said the report. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's pretty staggering. These are apparently 2012 figures. Mexico and Central America, immigrants from Mexico and Central America are receiving, on average, $8,251 per year. It's pretty clear. You don't have to be that great of a mathematician. I was good at math in junior high and high school, and college I only had to study 15 minutes before the final to make an A in algebra. But you don't have to be good in math to know no nation can sustain itself when it's giving people that are rushing into the country over $8,000 without them ever contributing a dime to the ongoing of the country. In any event, the article says the new report follows another that found President Obama seeking $17,613 for every new illegal minor, more than Social Security retirees get. That's just mind-boggling. In the words of Bo Pilgrim, that's mind-boggling. $17,600 that President Obama sought to provide to every illegal immigrant minor, person under 18. They've come into the country breaking our law to get here. And yes, I've been there all hours of the day and night on the border. No one comes across that border unaccompanied. You can't get across the Rio Grande in the areas they were coming across unaccompanied. 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old children, as they stand there, I've seen them come. They're being helped and you see a woman helping this child, and the child is looking to her for answers, looking to her for instructions, looking to her for help, and then she gets up there and, no, I don't know her at all. She's not accompanied. Nobody's with her. Well, yes, you're with her. All these other people are with her, but we call it unaccompanied. And then, of course, the president wants $17,613 for every new illegal immigrant under 18, which, as the article points out, is more than he would seek for Social Security retirees. Also, again, from the Washington Examiner, talking about an Arthur Richwine noted that illegal immigrants are barred from directly receiving welfare, but instead they get it via their legal children. Quote, illegal immigrants are barred from directly accessing most, though not all, welfare programs, but they can receive welfare through their U.S.-born children. Legal immigrant households, which have greater eligibility for welfare, cost $6,378 on average, unquote, he wrote. The average, again, this is just average household, headed by an immigrant, legal or illegal, costs taxpayers $6,234 in federal welfare benefits. The average immigrant household consumes 33% more cash welfare, 57% more food assistance, and 44% more Medicaid dollars than the average native household. At $8,251, households headed by immigrants from Central America and Mexico have the highest welfare costs of any sending region. The greater consumption of welfare dollars by immigrants can be explained in large part by their lower level of education and larger number of children compared to natives. Over 24% of immigrant households are headed by a high school dropout compared to just 8% of native households. In addition, 13% of immigrant households have 3 or more children versus only 6% of native households. So when you do the math, as some people actually have, our nation is not long for the world unless we get full track. I've seen and had signs shoved in front of my face over in front of the Supreme Court. Jesus was an immigrant. Jesus was a refugee. And this thing I know from everything we've been taught, everything that's in the Bible, Jesus was never an illegal immigrant. Jesus made clear, you render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You follow the law. He never broke the law nor advocated breaking the civilian law, though those who crucified him clearly violated the law. Well, an article here from Washington Free Beacon by Adam Credo today says report says homegrown violent extremists planting roots across U.S. foiled ISIS attacks, plots, and terror funding grows across the nation. At least 75 homegrown violent extremists were found to be operating across the United States in 2015, with the largest portion of these individuals pledging allegiance to the ISIS terror group, according to recent figures published by New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. The largest number of homegrown extremists were caught providing material support to various terrorist organizations, while at least 21% of the terrorists were found to be planning attacks in the United States, according to the figures. Another 10% successfully carried out terror attacks in New York, Tennessee, and Massachusetts, according to the data, which shows that the New York City area was home to the largest number of violent extremists. That term violent extremists, so beloved by this administration, so they don't have to use the term Islamic, radical Islamists, Islamic jihadists. Yet here's an article from Craig Bannister today. Administration censorship of State Department video mirrors deletion of Holland's Islamist remark. Article says State Department censorship of an on-camera confession made by spokeswoman Jen Psaki appears identical to the recent censorship by the White House of video of French President Holland speaking the words Islamist terrorism, exposed by MRC TV. Fox News' James Rosen reported on Monday that the State Department edited out an on-camera admission by Psaki in 2013 that it is Obama administration policy to lie to the American people, and that the Iran nuclear deal was a good example of a time it did. The administration used the same censorship tactics earlier this year when it edited out audio from President Holland calling Islamist terrorism the root of terrorism today. In this quote, the White House website has censored a video of French President Francois Hollande saying that Islamist terrorism is at the roots of terrorism. The White House briefly pulled video of a press event on terrorism with President Obama, and when it reached the White House government website and YouTube, the audio of Holland's translator goes silent, beginning with the words Islamist terrorism, then begins again at the end of the sentence. Two censorships by the Obama administration follow the same pattern. A comment objectionable to the administration was edited out of the official video posted on a government website. The censorship was discovered and documented because the official government transcript had not been edited. The missing video was somehow found and restored to the version on the government website after the censorship had been exposed, and the administration pleaded ignorance of the editing once it had been made public. Rosen's revelation begs a question posed to MRC TV multiple times since it broke the Holland story. Here's the question. Is this an isolated incident, or are there other times the administration has edited out comments it doesn't want the American people to hear? Consistent with actions like preventing people from hearing the French president point out the truth that Islamic terrorism is at the root of all terrorism, most terrorism it certainly is. Here's a front page magazine story. Obama frees USS Cole bombing terrorists. The title says, American Lives Don't Matter, from Daniel Greenfield. On Thursday morning, sailors on board the USS Cole were lining up for an early lunch. 7 died as an al-Qaeda bomb on board a fishing boat tore through the hull outside the gallery. The dead included 15 men and 2 women, one of whom had a young child. For 3 weeks, the crew of the USS Cole struggled to keep their ship from sinking while working waist-deep in water with bucket brigades, sleeping on the deck and living surrounded by the terrible aftermath of the terrorist attack. The survivors, wounded and whole, received the words, quote, "Glory is the reward of valor," unquote, written on the bent steel removed from the site of the explosion that tore through their ship and their lives. The President of the United States promised that justice would be done. Quote, to those who attacked them, we say, you will not find a safe harbor. We will find you and justice will prevail, unquote. As the article says, despite Clinton's word, justice did not prevail. The article goes on to point out all the injustice of what President Obama has done in freeing this bomber involved in the USS Cole bombing. He's a murderer of 17, wounder of 36 or so in an attack on a United States military ship. The United States cannot long exist when this is the way we treat those who are trying to destroy us. The Weekly Standard, Ben Rhodes wrote an account of a Weekly Standard story. Obama's foreign policy guru boasts of how the administration lied to sell the Iran deal. Speaker, ask how much time.
Everyone has 4 minutes remaining.
This is from May 5th. It says it's hardly any wonder that Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes has a mind meld with his boss, the president. According to a David Samuel New York Times Magazine article published Sunday and already posted to the website, Rhodes, like the president, is contemptuous of the American foreign policy establishment. What Obama calls, quote, the Washington playbook, unquote, dictating the sorts of responses available to the American policymakers, Rhodes calls the blob. This article points out what's in the news right now, that the Obama administration, and I'm being careful, my friend Mr. Speaker and Ms. Parliamentarian, the Obama administration was responsible for a lie perpetuated against the American people. They claimed they were dealing with moderates in Iran. They knew they were dealing with radicals. And Ben Rhodes is lying. He brags about all the lying they did to keep the Senate from standing up and having the courage to say this is a treaty. It's being done with radical Islamists in Iran. It hurts all our friends, helps our enemies. We will not allow that to happen. We're taking a vote on the Iran treaty as a treaty, and then when they did, if the Democrats tried to block it, then this, more than anything else they've ever taken up, would be something they should say, as Harry Reid did, we may not have 60, but this is critical. We vote on the Iran treaty. Vote it down. So 51 votes sets aside cloture, and they drive forward. It doesn't get the 2/3 vote, and we stop the radicals in Iran from getting the hundreds of billions that will flow not just in 1 year, but over a period of time. I met with Baluch people, Baluch leaders today, the southern part of Iran, southwest part of Pakistan. Those are indigenous Baluch areas, the most productive oil fields of Iran, Baluch areas. They have been so unfairly terrorized and mistreated. And they know what terrorists the leaders of Iran are. We have friends in those areas of Iran and Pakistan, and this administration chose to lie to the American people, to get the Senate to do nothing to stop them, and people around the world will die as a result of the lies that Ben Rhodes has now admitted to. God help us all. I yield back.